أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواسي والأقدام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان वलिमन खाफ मकाम रब्बिही जन्नतान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान ज़वाता अफ़नान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान फ़ीहिमा ऐनानी तजरियान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान फ़ीहिमा मिन कुल्लि फ़ाकिहतिन ज़ौजान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान मुत्तकिईन अला फ़ुरुशिन बताइनुहा मिन इस्तबरक़ वजनल जन्नतैनि दान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान फ़ीहिन्ना क़ासिरातुत तर्फ़ि लम यत्मिथहुन्न इंसु क़ब्लहुम वला जान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान कअन्नहुन्नल याक़ूतु वल मरजान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान हल जज़ाउल इहसानि इल्लल इहसान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान व मिन दूनिहिमा जन्नतान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान मुदहाम्मतान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान फ़ीहिमा ऐनानि नज़्ज़ाक़तान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान फ़ीहिमा फ़ाकिहतुन वन्नख़्लु वर्रुम्मान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान फ़ीहिन्ना खैरातुन हिसान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान हूरुम मक़सूरातुन फ़िल ख़ियाम फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान लम यत्मिथहुन्न इंसु क़ब्लहुम वला जान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान मुत्तकिईन अला रफ़रफ़िन ख़ुद्रिन व अबक़रिय्यिन हिसान फबिअय्यि आलाइ रब्बिकुमा तुकज़्ज़िबान तबारकस्मु रब्बिका ज़िल जलाली वल इकराम सदक़ल्लाहुल अलीयुल अज़ीम। सूरत मुबारकतुल फ़ातिहा।
सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद। गिर चुका दर फातिमा पर, अब है ज़ख्मी मोहम्मद की बेटी। हाय एक दिन सर झुकाए अपने हुजरे में बैठी हुई थी, और फिर हुसैन आके अम्मा से कहने लगे, माँ आँख में क्यों है आंसू, बताओ मुझे। फातिमा ने कहा, ए मेरे नूरे नज़र, आज अम्मा की याद बहुत आ रही है। सुन के माँ की सदा दिल तड़पने लगा। रो के शब्बीर ने फातिमा से कहा, کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، 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 انگلی پکڑ کے چلایا سینے سے تم نے لگایا، ان 3 سالوں میں اماں تم نے بہت کچھ سکھایا، ماں سے بچھڑ کے جیتے ہیں کیسے، کیا یہ سکھاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، ہائے کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، دروازہ جب سے گرا ہے پہلو شکستہ ہوا ہے، ٹوٹی ہوئی پسلیاں ہے، شبیر سب جانتا ہے، تکلیف میں ہوں بچوں کے اپنے، کب یہ بتاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی 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 ہے ماں، قصہ مجھے ایک ماں کا بھیا حسن نے سنایا، بیٹا وہی سامنے تھا جب ماں نے کھایا تماچا، اب اپنے گھر میں بیٹوں سے اپنا چہرہ چھپاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی 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 ہے ماں، جب سے لگا تازیانہ مشکل تھا مجھ کو سلانا، جب ہاتھ دیکھا تمہارا تب جا کے میں نے یہ جانا، ہوں ہاتھ زخمی پھر بھی تپک کر لوری سناتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، شبیر نے پھر صدا دی، کیا چھوڑ جاؤ گی تم بھی، کیوں ایسا کہتی ہو اماں، رہتی نہیں ماں کسی کی؟ اچھا بتاؤ کیا دور جا کے پھر لوٹ آتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی 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 ہے ماں۔ ایک روز ایسا بھی آیا تھا فاطمہ کا جنازہ، رخ سے کفن جب ہٹایا، شبیر نے ماں سے پوچھا، زیر کفن بھی آواز سن کر آنسو بہاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، ہائے کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں، کیوں چھوڑ جاتی ہے ماں۔ بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ کہاں جائے آخر بیابان ہر سو، شکستہ ہے پہلو اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ کہاں جائے آخر بیابان ہر سو، شکستہ ہے پہلو اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ رونے کو پہرا مصائب کا صحرا، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ در فاطمہ کو جلایا ہے تم نے، کیا وعدہ اپنا بلایا ہے تم نے۔ در فاطمہ کو جلایا ہے تم نے، کیا وعدہ اپنا بھلایا ہے تم نے۔ تماچے نہ مارو مسلمانوں، جاؤ علی کو بلاؤ، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ رونے کو پہرا مصائب کا صحرا، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ بیاں کس سے جا کر کروں درد اپنا، ہے غیروں کی دنیا کوئی نہیں اپنا۔ بیاں کس سے جا کر کروں درد اپنا، ہے غیروں کی دنیا نہیں کوئی اپنا۔ کوئی جا کے بابا سے کہہ دو یہ جا کر، کہ لے جاؤ آ کر، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ رونے کو پہرا مصائب کا صحرا اکیلی ہے زہرا اے لخت جگر اے حسن ابن حیدر یہ نانا کے پہلو میں سونے نہ دے اگر اے لخت جگر اے حسن ابن حیدر یہ نانا کے پہلو میں سونے نہ دے اگر تم آ جانا پہلو میں سو جانا ماں کے بقی میں یہاں پر اکیلی ہے زہرا رونے کو پہرا مصائب کا صحرا اکیلی ہے زہرا شاہ کربلا نے کہا رو کے ماں سے یہ مظلوم بیٹے یہ مظلوم ماں کے شاہ کربلا نے کہا رو کے ماں سے یہ مظلوم بیٹے یہ مظلوم ماں کے اکیلا ہوں میں بھی اکیلی ہے زینب اکیلے ہے بابا اکیلی ہے زہرا رونے کو پہرا مصائب کا صحرا اکیلی ہے زہرا بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Muhammad Hassan Alsheraa, Zakir al-Sabah Bimani, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jami wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumin. Surah Al-Fatiha. Dua Shafai Maris is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su' Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su' أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء Ya Allah. A reminder to everyone doing the Bibi Fatemah quiz. The deadline for submission is either tonight or tomorrow morning. Please submit your quiz at the table outside. The purpose of this quiz is to learn something about Bibi Fatemah alayha salam, so please feel free to submit as much as you have completed. At this time, let us invite Sayyid Muhammad Hassan Alsheraa to please come forward for tonight's Majalis. Bar Muhammad wa al Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Brothers, inshallah ta'ala, there is a request to move forward as many people will come in during the majlis so that it doesn't get too congested. Let us move forward after a salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Please move forward. I second for the love of Lady Al-Baneen. A third for the love of Sayyida Zahra with your loudest of voices. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء يا أيتها الصديقة الشهيدة أيتها السيدة سيدتي نساء العالمين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمنا من لجأ إليكم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. It is on a night like tonight where Amir al-Mu'mineen is digging the hole and grave in the city of Medina al-Munawwara. You've never seen Haydar al-Karrar weep so profusely, Ya Mu'mineen. Among him the angels and the samawat are profusely crying over the shahada that has befallen today. أما بعد يقول الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين يؤذون الله ورسوله لعنهم الله في الدنيا والآخرة وأعد لهم عذابا مهينا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآله. Dr. Hussein Walji, respected brothers and sisters, all those in attendance, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The pandemonium that erupted only a short few days after the passing of the Holy Prophet of Islam is one that history has never seen before, nor has it ever been recorded to the depths that history books mention. Suddenly you found an empire, a nation, that, foreshadowed by the holy book they followed, turned their back on their own heels. And the Prophet of Islam made mention of the Holy Quran. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقلبتم على أعقابكم. That this Prophet that you know, his name to be Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, is not but just another prophet from the prophets of Allah, rather messengers from Allah. If he was to die or is killed, you will turn your back on your heels, an expression and an idiom, for you went one way, then you completely made a 180 turn. Have you ever made a 180 turn going certain miles per hour? It is destructive. You were going that way, then the opposite has now been decided upon the death of the Holy Prophet of Islam. This was a warning foreshadowed in the Holy Quran. The adversaries and the tumultuous time period was something that was preliminary previous to the death of the Holy Prophet of Islam. As the Prophet was leaving this world, you found the hatred becoming apparent. He is requesting, I beg of you, give me a pen and paper. And the insults are being hurled one after the other. This is while the Holy Prophet of Islam is living and breathing. As soon as he leaves this dunya, the fangs of those who are out there to unleash their venom upon the very sanctity and violate such sanctity, the sanctity of the Holy Prophet's chosen family. We saw that the martyrdom of Lady Zahra is on the intellectual academic chopping board. Many question the legitimacy, the authenticity, the actuality of whether or not we are able to describe the passing of the lady known as As-Siddiqa. She's truthful, she will never lie. And for that reason, we should never lie as well. Is it fair to say, is it far from a lie that she was a shaheeda in addition? There are many presuppositions we need to acknowledge first. Number one, as followers of the Lady of Light herself, we have our own presuppositions in the sense that we were born in a narrative that immediately nurtured us with the love and wilayah of the Ahlul Bayt. Maybe not necessarily through the reasons that we all should learn about. It's not a good reason to say that the reason I adopt such an aqeedah is because my mom and dad told me so. And this is how we have been doing it. Well, this is the same attitude that Surah Al-Yasin says is not necessarily the best attitude to have to adopt an aqeedah. Yasin wal Quran al-Hakim innaka lamina al-mursalina ala sirat al-mustaqim tanzil al-aziz al-rahim litundhira qawman ma undhira aba'uhum fahum ghafilun. There are many people who fall victim to the idea that their forefathers followed a certain way, so they just did the same exact thing. Whereas in reality, if you were to warn people, say, listen, if what you believe in is truthful, can you prove it? And that is why in the world today, among the blessings of social media, we always hear lecturers speak about it and its vices. But there are wonderful blessings in addition to it. There's a ni'mah, of course, but there's also a ni'mah, is that you can find sources like that. I remember reading that the process in compiling Mawsu'at al-Ghadir of Al-Allam al-Amini, died in the 1970s, he went to India. He's originally from Iran, Qom. He went to India, traveled, and back then you can travel by foot or sometimes caravan. He went to Syria, he went to Mecca, he went to Egypt, just to compile a hadith. Now we have the luxury of typing in on Google, Wikipedia, Sunnah.org, all these websites, alislam.org, they're out there just to learn a thing or two. Maybe what I believe in is just folklore that has been inherited down in town, but I can't, if I was to look, I won't find anything. And this is a problem in our communities. I've heard time and time again, without pointing fingers, many speakers say the following, and it's like, it's subhanAllah, they admit it. The following, you will not find it in any resources, but it's from the heart. MashaAllah, may Allah bless your heart. That is a lying heart though. It's from the heart. Just believe me. This, you can't prove it in a hadith, but wallah, it's true. Where did you hear it? It makes so much sense, but I need to substantiate it. Where is your citation? Where is your narration? To me, I know you have a good, sincere, and genuine heart, but this is a false belief, for example. You can hear the fables and the myths that are out there. You do not need to add anything to the legacy of Ahlul Bayt to make them any better. Perfection, addition to that, makes it imperfect. It's perfect, don't touch it. It's nice, it's set and clear. You may have good intention, but the fact that you have to make up stuff, make up narrations, not just in support of Ahlul Bayt, but against their enemies, and this is a delicate one. Many people will jump on their heels for this one. I will make up stuff now, because I have a bara'ah inside of me. No. If there is reason to despise for the hate of Allah, love for Allah's sake, but hate for Allah's sake as well, then you find the reasons. Don't make up any reason. I know many people, they are risen and they tell me stories that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib created an elephant. I heard this one. He created an elephant by looking at dirt. Boom, kun fayakun, because of course kun fayakun, Allah can give it to other people, which in of itself is a discussion, and He created this animal. Where is the hadith? It's very impressive. Just believe it. Just believe it. Your intention is good, but you just ruined a whole generation of their aqeedah. And I'm sorry. I know many people might reject such an idea because there are wonderful speakers that have that intention, but if your intention is to serve Ahlul Bayt, do it through the Quran and the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt only. Even the idea of dream interpretation, and many people really hold dear and near this concept, that wallah, I saw it in my dream. Your dream is a hujjah to you, not to others, and you act upon it. If Allah wanted to share it to the masses, He would have made us all have the same exact dream. But it was sent to you, khalas, act upon it. This, brothers and sisters, it must be paid attention to the highest degree, because people will create to make you hate others and make you love the Ahlul Bayt more. But then when you try to do your resources, you have a midlife crisis. That's not true. Maybe what I've been taught is not true, and many teenagers fall victim of this. When you try to become learned, you try to do your own research here and there, but the study of ahadith is a very delicate study. I mean, why do we have a heritage of the Hawza that spanned 15 generations, centuries rather, beyond that, just to study that transmission? Of course, because what was told in many cases may not be the reality. Keep it. What the Holy Prophet has said, إِنِّي تَارِكُمْ فِيكُمْ الثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وعترة أهل بيتي ما إن تمسكتم بهما لن تضلوا بعدي أبدا. Let me look at Sirat of Ahlul Bayt. Let me look at the Holy Quran. Combine that, you have the most blissful way of life. Anything else, it's my intention, it's from the heart. You can't find it, but believe in it. Say afwan, put that to the side. We have a lot more issues to address than issues that are going to be made up to begin with. In any case, the previous point on the tumultuous period after the death of the Holy Prophet of Islam is laced with so much confusion. Brothers over here, if we can move forward for those who are just entering, as I mentioned, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, come forward. Many are coming in. Now we've reached the stage where questions are asked. There is a lot of demand, very little supply. Let us tonight, inshallah ta'ala, attempt to give some degree of justice to satisfying such confusion. Now I bring a very point here that many have thought about for a while actually. That why is there so much confusion on the identity of Lady Zahra's martyrdom? If that was such a big deal as reported and narrated, then you should find it ubiquitous, undeniable. If, for example, we look at the Shahada and its full details and what happened and what went on, this should be something widespread. It shouldn't be a matter of doubt. I'll bring an example with respect to American history. Now, all of us are semi-familiar with U.S. history. In the span of all the U.S. presidents that we've ever had, what are we on, number 46, going on 47? I'm not too sure, I kind of forget these days. And depending on who you ask, he's not my president, that's my president, okay. But in any case, from the first guy to right now, how many of them were victims of assassination? How many? You got two. Abe Lincoln, if I'm not mistaken, and JFK. JFK, what was the longest story about how he fell victim in 1963 of an assassination? He was in Texas, it was like a ceremony, and on his way, I guess somewhere, the man known as Lee Harvey Oswald shot him, assassinated him, end of story, that's it. 3 days ago, they released files, if you heard on the news recently, that there was a conspiracy theory. It wasn't just one man. There was a nation behind this. There was a Russian allegation intervention. We've heard that story before. But it's not all that meets the eye. For the last 50 years, people thought one narrative. Now, recently, new reports have been released. Information has been doxed and leaked out there. And it seems like there was a mass agenda that was going on internationally on a global scale. This was only 50 years ago. What about an event that occurred 1,400 years ago? Of course you'll find a lot of confusion because at the end of the day, history is what? His story. Whoever gets to write the pages and stories of history can put what they want. Until you do depth analysis and research, diraya, ruwaya, you can find presuppositions and presumptions that just don't add up. What do we mean by this? The common narrative from 3/4 of the Muslim world, as tonight is our subject, the undeniable martyrdom of Lady Zahra alayhi salam, is what with respect to her death? That she died, the following words verbatim, حُزْنًا عَلَىٰ أَبِيهَا, out of grief and sorrow over the passing of her father Rasulullah. And the arguments are placed as followed. Number one, that she was a very young girl when she died. Hence, she didn't live long after Rasulullah. It would be a correlation analysis that Rasulullah's death follows, then after that, Lady Zahra's death. Must mean that she was affected by the death of the Holy Prophet of Islam, simply like that. Number two, what kind of father was Rasulullah such that when you lose him, it's as if you lost the whole entire world. As a result, you notice that Lady Zahra, in addition to her feminine nature, being that receptive, emotional individual, losing such an amazing father, it's not too far-fetched to consider that she simply died, saddened and grief-stricken by the passing of her father, Rasulullah. Our response to this is, that would be fine. However, there are presuppositions and presumptions out there that if you add the jigsaw puzzles pieces together, doesn't make sense. Number one, in addition to that, if it's just simply saddened for the passing of my father, how come we don't know where her grave is? No Muslim can tell you where the grave of Lady Zahra is. For those who've gone to Baqi', alhamdulillah, having had the honor to go back in 2017, we entered Jannat al-Baqi', and subhanallah, back then they had on the tombs, you can see them, sometimes they had like a tablet of marble or clay. They've removed them, but for those who went pre-1970, they would have like a slab upon the graves. The grave is just a headstone. You don't have the name, but a slab that would say, for example, Halima as-Sa'diyya, the wet nurse of the Holy Prophet of Islam, right there buried. Aisha, she has her grave. You have Abdullah bin Ja'far al-Tayyar. They have them mentioned right there. Now they've removed this, so you don't know the identity. But there's still maps, by the way, and you can even just look it up on your phone, the map of the graveyard of Baqi'. So when you go, inshallah, you can see that the first grave that comes up is Uthman bin Affan, Uthman bin Mad'un. It's interesting to follow along who's what. It's not too difficult. Of course, A'immat al-Baqi', you can never miss them. Lonely and all alone, and you can't even do ziyarah, but you can tell Imam al-Sadiq, al-Abbas, so on and so forth. Now, in that collection, there is a grave. The maps show them, and previously were the stone tablets of the name to identify showed it as well. Qasim bin Rasulillah. The Holy Prophet had a son, hence he is known as what? Abul Qasimi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The infant child of Rasulullah who passed away literally in his infancy. He was arguably the firstborn boy of the Holy Prophet of Islam. We know exactly to the T, exactly where he is buried. A boy who was no older than 2 years old of the Holy Prophet. From the line of the Prophet and Sayyidah Khadija, of course. Then you have Ibrahim, the son of the Prophet. I saw with my own eyes, and everyone can go there if you identify their graves. Right then and there, and they're in the walkway, so they're not even far away as well. These are the baby children of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Abdullah, Qasim, many might describe Tahir in another name, and Ibrahim. We know them. Then what about Fatemah al-Zahra? More significant than any of the children of the Holy Prophet of Islam. How come it is ambiguous? How come it's unknown? If it's simply a matter of saddened for my father's death, then this doesn't add up. So that's one element. When you go to investigate anything, you have to take in the big picture, not just the conclusion. If you just simply have the person passed away, but you don't look at everything else, you won't have a fair assumption or a conclusion as to how exactly they passed away. And it is to superimpose that they passed away based on your assumption that the Prophet was the reason why they died. That has to also be substantiated. You have to look at everything in order to have what? A complete narrative of history. Some might say, well, in addition to that, why don't you have a clear-cut hadith in your narrative that it's sahihat as-sanad, that says, you claim, because what we claim sometimes is a lot to be accepted. It might come across as inflammatory, that the most idolized people from my narrative, the first and second Khalifa, those two Khulafa, Al-Khalifan, Al-Shaykhan, that they were responsible for such a tragedy, you need to give me something of equal proportion, if not more, to substantiate it. Don't give us false ahadith here and there. Now the reality is, history doesn't work like that. Because you cannot find a hadith that is absolutely golden with the details today that we commemorate the masa'ib of Lady Fatemah Zahra Shahada. You can't. Because at times, when you want to find sahih hadith, it's not a matter of, let me find just one hadith and make my conclusion. Is let me look at the other presuppositions that are out there, when in combination, formulate a conclusion. Because for the longest time ever, the compilation of ahadith was banned. For the first 100 years, you were not allowed to compile hadith. This was an order. And the reason being was what? حَتَّى لَا يَخْتَلِطُ الْحَدِيث بِالْقُرْآنِ. This was the exact reason Abu Bakr made clear. So that the hadith does not get confused with the Quran, we will not compile the ahadith of the Holy Prophet of Islam. In Tariq al-Dhahabi, he ordered for anyone who had a written hadith to be burnt. Burn it. We do not want people to confuse it with the Holy Quran. Of course, this is a problem. Justification is not met here so that people won't confuse hadith with Quran. No one can confuse the words of the Holy Quran. But in any case, you had a situation where it was banned to write ahadith. Furthermore, you had establishments that prevented the compilation of ahadith as well. I don't understand many people, if you're familiar with the great alim, al-Shaheed Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, who passed away, I believe, in the late 1970s, rahmatullah alayhi, he wrote a book called Fadak fi Tarikh. And this one garnered a lot of controversy, this book. In this book, Ayatollah Shaheed Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, of course, is a remarkable figure, undoubtedly one of the most erudite scholars of the late century from the Shia heritage. His halaqat of usul al-fiqh are being studied in the Hawza today. So there's no doubt of his academic credentials. His book, however, Fadak fi Tarikh, is a controversial one. Why? Because in it, when he addresses Abu Bakr, for example, or Umar ibn al-Khattab, he addresses them with the false Sunni title. And we say Sunni in the form of academic discourse, not in necessarily recognition, non-Shia. So what is Abu Bakr's full title? As-Siddiq, Umar al-Faruq. So when he mentions Fadak fi Tarikh is a simple symposium, basically. It's a compendium of what happened in the life of Lady Zahra, interestingly enough, and the issue and debate of the land of Fadak. Whenever he refers to these two khulafa, he calls them by their non-Shia title. And many people were like, that's not good on him. I respect Shaykh Ma'baq, for example, but that was wrong. He should have done that. Be strong. Because the idea is always what? You don't want to offend others. And so don't jeopardize your aqeedah because of others will be offended. Be strong, ya Shaheed al-Sadr. What's wrong with you? First of all, if there was anyone that was strong, it was Shaheed al-Sadr, because he spoke outwardly against the establishment at the time and literally paid the price in his own blood. Secondly, you are not allowed to write a book with the names of these khulafa without giving them their title. In Iraq, in the Ba'athist regime, you are not allowed to write a book like that. So the thing is, do I not write any book and share the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt and the seerah of Ahlul Bayt because I'm going to write the full title that I may not necessarily agree with, as-Siddiq or whatever, or I can employ what is known as taqiyya. In this moment, I will relinquish my full belief and compromise here so that I am able to do justice 99% of the way as well. Or 100% of the way, I don't give any information out there. In that time period, you have to be very careful. And I remember my father would mention, Sayyid Basim al-Shara', that I used to follow the Minhaj al-Salihin of Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. So like the fiqh rulings of Shaykh al-Sadr, Som, Zakat, etc. He says, you know what we used to do when we used to have it? We can't put it in the library in our house. My dad reports this. So the narration goes from me to my father. What we do is we buried it in the ground. Just to follow my ahkam, Sawm, Zakat, Salah, Najasa, Tahara, Wudu, Jabira, Tayammum, these sort of things, we had to bury it. Why? Every now and then someone would knock and investigate the home from that government at the time. If they see this book, it's immediately investigation. You have to hide it. Now I tell you, this was no older than about 35, 40 years ago, okay? What about when you're living under Mutawakkil Abbasi, Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, who comes and makes a culture of saying before khutbah al-Jum'ah, la'na on Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the Abbasid and the Uthmani governments, where forget writing a book, saying naming your child Ali was haram. I remember Al-Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi, what would he say? They would say to him, what day is it today? I see people merrymaking and celebrating. They say, oh, it's Eid al-Fitr. People have now finished Ramadan and it's Eid al-Fitr. And Hajjaj, being such a pious Muslim and mu'min, he asked, what do people do on Eid al-Fitr exactly, the Muslims? He says, they sacrifice. And they give away, is one thing they do. He says, okay, then today we will sacrifice as well and give to the poor as our fitrah. Sacrifice, catch anyone named Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Fatemah, behead all of them today. We're going to celebrate Eid as well. Yeah, and you couldn't name your kids these names. You want to write books all of a sudden? That's the crime that we live in the world today. Intellectual terrorism as well. This has to be taken into consideration. So what is your next best attempt in garnering a full piece of information that can conclude as a fact? You look at the presumptions. Presumption number one was what? This is a fact. Why was she buried in a place we don't know where she is buried? Number two, حَاجِجْهُمْ بِمَا أَلْزَمُوا بِهِ أَنفُسِهِمْ. This is a principle. Whenever you come to debate and discourse, the non-Shia or anyone who debates and disagrees with you, hold them to account with what they believe in. So then you have to look into their own resources. Let's go to their resources, for example. I have mine. I might look at Al-Kafi, Al-Sharif, that might mention, for example, the Shaheed Al-Muhsin, the child of Amir al-Mu'mineen, who never got to see the light of day. My narrations will not satisfy the non-Shia. So I have to look at the other side, for example. So I look at material like Sahih Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari. Within Sahih Muslim, it is mentioned verbatim that Fatemah al-Zahra alayha salam matat wa hiya ghadibatun ala Abu Bakr. She died and she is angry, in the state of anger, with Abu Bakr. Before I proceed, this is not a pejorative, not going jabs at the other school of thought. Wal-'ayadhu billah. This is a matter of I want to examine history, Get rid of the folds. Let's look at the truth here. Why is it the fact that we all come with a consensus, she died angry? And is that a problem if she dies angry with someone here? It is a problem. Why? Because we have in the same Sahih Muslim, that in the hadith reported by the Prophet, Fatemah bad'atun minni. She is a part of me. Man aadhaha faqad aadhani. Whoever hurts her. Now the wording I use in English may not be justified. Aadhaha, adha means annoyance to be actually. Adha, adhetni, go away. Sometimes we use that terminology. Man aadhaha. So the Prophet is hitting at the bare bone minimum. If you just bother her, faqad aadhani. Not whoever makes her engulfed with angry hate and venom and vengeance. None of that. Whoever harms her, beats her, slaps her. None of that. Adha. If you did adha to her, you've done it to me. Furthermore, man aadhani faqad aadha Allah. Whoever harms me, annoys me, has annoyed Allah as well. I have to now plug in the hadith with Quran because my Prophet said it undeniably, that I leave my Quran in Ahlul Bayt. So I take the hadith and I plug it into the Holy Quran. I get the following ayah we opened up with. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ يُؤْذُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Those who bring adha, same word, man adhani, whoever annoys me. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ لَعَنَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَعَدَّ لَهُمْ عَذَابًا مُهِينًا. This is very heavy now. Whoever as so much annoys God and His Prophet, adha, bothers God and His Prophet, the la'na of Allah. Some will say, why do you do la'na? Well, God found it necessary. God was the first to do la'na here all of a sudden. Whoever does so, Allah will bring about His la'na on them. And in the akhirah, in the dunya, he will see or she will see what? A very humiliating punishment. So if you put the codes and the jigsaw pieces together, you get a very unflattering image all of a sudden. Is that sufficient to say that there was this event of an ambush, a burning of a door, a scream, a wail, a crushing between the wall and a door? Sufficient? Not yet. You have a situation where one is angry. Now you have to say why. Why is this individual angry? That she dies muta'adhdiyah, annoyed, such that the la'na of Allah is now being invoked all of a sudden. What do you do in this situation? You have to now look at why. This is history. You have to open it up, the pages, you got to see it. Open the pages up, you find another reason. You can get two exact reasons. Number one, the whole ordeal of the Fadak land. Is that sufficient, for example? Because I clearly see in the last week of Lady Zahra's life that there was a back and forth between her and the first Khalifa. That I'm telling you, Prophet of God gave me this as a gift. You're saying give me proof and evidence. Number one, there is a principle called qa'idatul yad. Whoever owns something, they are not obligated to prove to you that they took it or didn't take it. They are the current owners of it. You have to prove otherwise that they're not the owners of it. So the person who owns property or land, it is theirs until proven that it's not. So she currently owns Fadak. She approaches the first Khalifa and says, you now took full possession of it. It is mine. Give it back to us. It's rightfully not yours. He requests from her evidence and proof. As mentioned the other night, she then says, look, if you want evidence and proof, my husband Ali ibn Abi Talib, they reject. Like, no, Ali's your husband. He might have an incentive to want Fadak as well. A financial incentive. As we mentioned, the yield of Fadak produced 70,000 dinar annually. That's a lot of money. So it's like Ali might have an incentive to act as a witness. We won't accept him. Who else do you have? My sons, Hassan and Hussein. They were there. So this shows you, when did Rasulullah gift Fadak to her? In her own house. Subhanallah. He probably returned from the conquest of Khaybar, and he came back to the house of Fatemah and Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he said, Ya Zahra, I want to gift this land to you as compensation for everything your mother Khadija gifted for Islam. Allah revealed this ayah in the Holy Quran, وَآتِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى حَقَّ, and give the near family their right now. And I have to give this in compensation for you. You are the nearest of my family. Who was the only one there to witness? Amir al-Mu'mineen, Al-Hassan wal-Hussein. They said, Hassan and Hussein are children. We don't accept their testimony. Lastly, who does she bring? As-Sayyida Ayman. She was present there in that moment. They said a lady's witness is half. Do you have another one? That's it. The sad reality is you're accusing a Siddiqah of lying and that you need evidence. And it got to the point, as mentioned, that he said, you know what? No, what am I doing debating Fatemah al-Zahra? Take it, it's all yours. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab came and he said, don't do that. Give me the treaty. And he ripped it up to shreds. Read Tariq al-Dhahabi. Read al-Tabaqat li Ibn Sa'ad as well. His Tabaqat is a collection of narrations, only the seerah of the Holy Prophet and right after the Holy Prophet of Islam for about a span of a few hundred years. He records this in clear detail that then he grabbed it and ripped it. What are you doing? Fadak is powerful. Leave it to us. In that situation, Lady Zahra invoked her condemnation. If this is sufficient for her to die angry, then it says a lot about Lady Zahra's character, because we've seen the rights of Ahlul Bayt many times before usurped, many times before harmed and angry, but they always forgive. This isn't of them to act and respond in this way. There has to be more to this. So we observe the following. You claim, in our tradition, in the sense, that Lady Zahra fell victim to a killing. Do you have anything to suffice for that? We will provide resources. There is a very remarkable and well-known resource, Kitab Sulaym bin Qais al-Hilali. Many have questioned the reality of this book. The reality is it exists. But some scholars like Sheikh al-Mufid might say, Sulaym bin Qais, the book exists. Sulaym bin Qais, I don't know his identity too well. So when we don't know a person's identity, you don't make them weak. You make them majhul, unknown. He puts a question mark. However, his student, Shaykh al-Ta'if, Shaykh al-Tusi, will say, no, there is no doubt. Sulaym bin Qais is completely reliable because he had resources that Shaykh al-Mufid didn't have. Shaykh al-Saduq as well. Al-Kafi of Shaykh al-Kulayni mentions information that's just scattered out there. That's history, by the way. You don't expect to find everything in one clear-cut passage. It's all scattered, and that's why we have ulama, mashallah. They have to bring them together. Shaykh al-Kulayni, before all of them, mentions Muhsin, the unborn child, mentions Lady Zahra in her address as a shaheed al-madluma, the one that was oppressed, as a martyr. All of these do not add up as someone who died angry over land. You have to collect all these presumptions. You look at this book again. Kitab Sulaym bin Qais mentions in detail that what had happened was the following. That Amir al-Mu'mineen, after the death of the Holy Prophet of Islam, whether many believe it was 30 days after, or 45 days after, or 75 days after, or 90 days. We are in the third narration today, by the way. Al-Ruwaya al-Thalitha, as it is known, the 95th day. And in that situation, Amir al-Mu'mineen gathered with the upright companions. When he did so, he was in his own home. This is all details in Kitab Sulaym bin Qais. Kitab Sulaym bin Qais, Sulaym bin Qais is a companion of Imam Ali. It is the first Shia book of Ahadith. Before Al-Kafi, before Tahdib al-Ahkam. It was the very first Shia book of Hadith. So you can't argue that it is not an early source, because many would tell you, that's a source from Bihar that came a few hundred years ago. Give me something earlier. There's always precedent for that which was the earliest. Kitab Sulaym bin Qais, in fact, is arguably the first book of Islamic seerah ever. Sulaym bin Qais al-Hilali, 50 odd years after the death of the Holy Prophet of Islam. In any case, Amir al-Mu'mineen gathered in the home, and they were deciding as to what can be done to address what has now happened, the usurpation of the rights of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, the wrong picture that is painted is the following, that there was this ambush suddenly, and Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib was sitting as it took place, thus putting a question mark on the integrity of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. The reality goes as such. The house of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is no more than about 100 square meters. Not big. It has two doors. One that opens to the street, to the public. One that opens to the masjid of Rasulullah. Hence the Quran makes mention that all the doors were closed around the masjid except the door of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. He could enter from his house straight to the masjid. Everyone else had their door closed. Many people built homes around the masjid of the Prophet, but the Prophet said close all of them except Ali ibn Abi Talib. The ambush, how did it take place? From both sides. You know how many people don't realize that? So it's not just from the street. You have here and here. So when you have one group concerned with one end, you have to have another group concerned with the other end. A lot of confusion is occurring here suddenly. Then, let's not forget, the house is called who though? Baytu Fatemah. It's the house of Fatemah. She can do whatever she wants. It's her house. It is known as her exact property. She has every right to do whatever she wants. It's not as if Amir al-Mu'minin said, go get the door. No, it's her house. She could do whatever she likes. Furthermore, when Sayyidah Zahra does do something like this, it emphasizes the significance of her disapproval, as opposed to, for example, Amir al-Mu'minin. If the daughter of the Prophet of Islam came to the door herself to tell you, no, allegiance will not be given to you outright, that means it's a major deal. She has every right to do this. It's within her deal to do this. The response came back, then we will burn the house down. This segment here, remember the presumptions, remember, is found in a non-Shia material. Up until afterwards, you have to include our material here. Where can this be found? Many might assume a rogue hadith. Minhaj al-Sunnah of Ibn Taymiyyah, the founder of the Salafi school of thought. He mentions it in the following sentence, وَغَايَةْ مَا يُقَالْ. The most you could say. I acknowledge that there was an attempt to get to the house of Ali and Fatemah. But the purpose was this, to see if just in case they had money that belonged to the government and they want to take it back to the government. That in of itself is worse. You're accusing the Ahlul Bayt of theft. And the terminology of what I will burn down the house or the door is not to be considered literally. It's an expression. وَلِأَحْرُقَنَّ عَلَيْكُمُ الدَّارِ is not necessarily true. It's an expression. First of all, he provides zero proof. When you do this, you have to put a subtext. Where can this be found? He doesn't do it. He does it with other narrations, for example. This one, he doesn't. He says, in Minhaj al-Sunnah, it's likely that Ali and Fatimah had money in the house that wasn't theirs, and they just wanted to take it back. You're not supposed to hold that cash. It's ours. Give it back, or else we'll burn the house down. This is one resource from the non-Shia material. The other is Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shaybah. He mentions it in chronological detail, that there was an attempt made and moving straight to the house of Amir al-Mu'minin and Sayyidah Zahra. Umar ibn al-Khattab reached the door and he began to address the door. He says, O family of the Prophet of Islam, bring out Ali ibn Abi Talib to pledge allegiance to his new caliph. An observation needs to be made. What's the big deal? What do you want exactly from Ali ibn Abi Talib? The issue is, where was Imam Ali when the caliph has now been made a khalifa, not in Saqifah? And so it looks really bad that Ali did not pledge allegiance. So now you have to force an allegiance. Because in the event of Saqifah, Imam Ali was not present. Salman, Miqdad, Zubair, Abu Dhar, none of them, Jabir bin Abdullah, they were not present. You had a number of members from the Ansar and the Muhajirun and the two first Khulafa present. When you miss out on 3/4 of the Muslim Ummah at the time, your authority and legitimacy of your caliphate is not strong. So you have to force it now. Especially if it's someone like Ali ibn Abi Talib. If he didn't give bay'ah, then you're in trouble. You're in a mess. Have to get it now. Abu Bakr orders the following. Now, an interesting note. The attempt made on the house of Lady Zahra alayhi salam is recorded in Tarikh al-Dhahabi and al-Mas'udi, Muruj al-Dhahab, and Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad. But in this fashion, in the wasiyyah of Abu Bakr, as he is dying. As you know, Abu Bakr lived for 2 years after Rasulullah died. So his khilafah was 2 years. Umar ibn al-Khattab, his khilafah was 10 years. And Uthman bin Affan, his khilafah was 12 years. I believe these are dates we should remember sometimes. Many of us know about world history so well. Let's learn more about the timeline, even as dark as it is sometimes, of what had happened after the death of your holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. In this situation, as he is dying in his deathbed, he begins to make a will. When he writes his will, he puts it down and he begins to say something. He says, the following is the ijma' consensus of what he uttered as his final words. Laytani. 3 things. How I wish. 2 of them I did. 1 of them I didn't do. Number 1, how I wish I did not burn. Laytani lam ahriq al-fuja'a. Al-fuja'a as-sulami. How I wish I didn't burn the man al-fuja'a as-sulami. Consensus, by the way. Al-fuja'a was a man, Abu Bakr burnt him alive. He came to him, and the justification might be presented where he said, I became Muslim. He said, you're Muslim? He said, yes. So give me a weapon to go and bring more people to Islam. Number 1, how are you bringing more people to Islam with a weapon? So he gave him the sword. He went and he began to threaten people and take their money. He called him, he says, you used me to get weapon and you scared people and you took their money. Bring him, tie him with a rope in Baqi' on a pole, set him alive. And they burnt the man alive. He says, you know what, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I could have just killed him normally, even that, just not burn him alive. You know, the hadith is there. Amr ibn al-As burns an anthill in Bukhari, it mentions. An anthill. You know an anthill? Rasulullah comes up to him and he says, Mahin ya Amr, innaha qawmun ta'budullah. It's a nation that worships Allah. Why'd you burn it alive? Burning is haram, brothers and sisters. Nothing is there like the flames of this dunya. How terrible is it? Have you ever burnt your finger on a candle? Can you think at times, what is it like to be more burnt than that? How painful it is. May Allah heal all those who have burnt wounds. He says, I did this. How I wish I didn't do this. And Rasulullah makes a hadith. Suddenly, he says, لا يعذب بالنار إلا خالق النار. No one has the right to use fire to hurt others except the Lord of the fire. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, how I wish I didn't burn al-Fuja'a as-Sulami. Number two, how I wish I did not free Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais. ليتني لم أعفو عن Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais al-Kindi. Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais al-Kindi, by the way, his daughter Ju'da bint Al-Ash'ath poisoned Imam al-Hassan. Al-Ash'ath came to Islam, then left Islam. He became a murtad. And he was a very troubling individual. And so Abu Bakr, the ruling was, if he comes to Islam, then leaves, you have to kill him. That was the mentality. Man irtadda faqtulu. Whoever does irtidad, kill them. He's like, I wish I just killed him. He freed him, and he caused so much corruption afterwards. His daughter became, that's a horrible family tree. Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath as well, and Ju'da bint al-Ash'ath himself. This is all a couple of riffraff. Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath, by the way, participated in the killing of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib with Abdurrahman ibn Muljim, Abd al-Shaytan. Ju'da, his sister, participated in the killing of whom? Imam al-Mushtaba. Al-Ash'ath himself helped facilitate all of this. His great-grandchild fought where? In Karbala. Now, the man is a shajara khabitha, exactly. He says, I just wish I killed him, and I didn't kill al-Fuja'a. And the last thing he says, وَلَيْتَنِي لَمْ أَكْشُفْ عَنْ دَارِ فَاطِمَةِ. How I wish I did not expose the house of Fatemah. Plug in these presumptions. There was an attempt that was made, at least to the very degree where a threat of burning was done. The house was exposed. The lady of heaven, who is the most sabira, is dying angry. And she orders, the following is in Sahih al-Bukhari, that Abu Bakr and Umar do not attend my funeral. You would think that there are funerals, that some of them, they're not worth attending. Everyone deserves a funeral that's worthy. But there are some you have to attend. Imagine if it's like your own mother. Imagine if it's like your own grandmother. How shameful it is on a person who deliberately avoids this, such moment like this. What about the lady who was known as Ummi Abiha, the mother of her father Rasulullah? And who was Rasulullah to you and I? Rasulullah says to Imam Ali, Ya Ali, Ana wa anta abawa hadhihi al-ummah. Ya Ali, me and you are the dads of this ummah. How about the lady who was the mother of her own father? What is she to us all of a sudden, ya subhanallah? Would you not attend such a funeral? She says, those two do not attend mine. This all comes and formulates the jigsaw puzzle pieces together, brothers and sisters. And on a night like tonight, Amir al-Mu'mineen, as we opened up this discussion, he is filled with his clothes of tears, crying and drenching his clothes. He goes in the middle of the night. No one sees him. He is accompanied by 6 individuals only. 6. Ya Zahra, only 6 attended your funeral. There are people, no one knows them, but the community will go out to support. You remember your father and your mother? How many people were there? It was something nice to see. At least someone came. I know you didn't know them, but Jazakallah alf khair for coming and attending this funeral. 6 attended ladies in her own order. Ghariba in her own funeral. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to bury Fatemah al-Zahra alayha salam. Before he places her down, an interesting moment occurs, brothers and sisters. Hadith is very heavy. He is sitting over her body, salamullahi alayha, and he begins to say the following line. He says, أما ليالي فمسهد وأما حزني فسرمد حتى يختار الله لي دارك التي أنت فيها مقيم يا زهراء. As for my nights, they will be sleepless, Ya Fatemah. What did you do to me? I will never sleep again. As for my sadness, it will be everlasting until Allah unites me with you in heaven. In Nahj al-Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen, in Siffin they see him. His blessed beard, salamullahi alayh, is white. And they say, Ya Abul Hassan, why don't you dye it? Make some youthfulness in your face, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, to dye one's beard and to look youthful is an act of joy. And I am in a hal of aza. وَأَنَا فِي حَالِ الْعَزَاءِ. So what aza? Is like, I miss my wife Fatemah Zahra. So Ya Ali, this was way back 30 years ago. You're still mourning her? He says, I don't go a day except that I miss her. Of course. And how could you blame me? And who is there like Fatemah Zahra? And the poetic lines he begins to say, she was a flower sent from heaven, went back to heaven and left its fragrance in my mind. In that moment, Amir al-Mu'mineen looks at his children, all of them saying goodbye to their mother. He brings them finally. On the feet of Fatemah Zahra was Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. By the head of Fatemah Zahra was Sayyida Zainab salamullahi alayha, young 5-year-old. But by the side of Lady Zahra, to her right, was the young Imam al-Hussein salawatullahi alayhi, and he was crying. The crying continued and continued until the young Hussein threw himself on his mother's chest. He threw himself right on her and he began to say the line, Umma kallimini ana waladik al-Hussein. Mother, speak to me. It's your son. I am your boy, Hussein. They began to cry profusely in this moment, brothers and sisters. According to the hadith found in Allam al-Majlisi's material, Jibreel alayhi salam came down. He told Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, move Hussein from the chest of his mother, for the angels cannot handle seeing Hussein cry over his mother's chest. A few days before this event, brothers and sisters, Lady Zahra was feeling her final moments approaching her. She told As-Sayyida Fidda alayha salam, Ya Fidda, I feel my time is running short, so I will retreat to my room and begin worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you do not hear me worship anymore, then know that I have returned back to my Lord. The pangs of death were coming, but Fidda, one thing, do not forget. Hassan and Hussein, when they come back, tell them to go eat, for if they hear what happened to me, they will never eat from that moment. Look how she cares about her children. Ya Zahra. Then she goes to her room, begins to worship Allah. From how much she loved the ibadah of Rabbul Alameen, she wants her final moments to be spent only in ibadah. She begins to say, La ilaha illallah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, sabran ala qada'ak. Patience over what will happen here. Alhamdulillah, wallahu akbar, subhanallah. From that moment, the voice was becoming quieter and quieter. Lady Fidda heard that she is no longer reciting. She began to go to the door hastily and begins to say, Sayyidati Zahra, answer me. She hears nothing. She opens the door and she sees Fatemah Zahra laid down with her eyes opened, and she has returned back to Allah. She closes the eyes of Fatemah Zahra. She begins to say to her, Ya Sayyidati, ablighi salami ila Rasulillah. Send my salams to Rasulullah. At that moment, Hassan and Hussein returned back to the home. She rose to them and says, Oh my beloved eyes, the apples of my eyes, go and eat. She begins to hear them say, Oh Fidda, this is not like us to eat without our mother. She says to them that she is asleep right now. What can I tell them? They said it's not her time to sleep. We want our mother Fatemah. If you want her, go. She is in her room. They go to the room. A young Hassan and Hussein, they rush and jump onto the chest of their mother, crying, Mother, mother, what happened to you? They run straight to the masjid where Amir al-Mu'mineen is praying. Salman al-Muhammadi sees them. He says, says, "Oh children of Rasulullah, why are you running and crying like this?" They said, "Ya Salman, عجبا للسماء لن تنطبق على الأرض لقد ماتت أمنا فاطمة." It is astonishing how the sky has not collapsed on the earth. Our mother Fatima has died. They inform Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he hears this, nothing like this has happened before with him. He falls straight face to the ground like that. The Asadullah al-Ghalib, straight to the ground. He goes to bury Fatima to Zahra. When he returns back home, he sees all of the children gathered, but one of them is missing. Where is Zainab? He goes and he finds her praying in the room of Fatima to Zahra on her prayer mat. She missed her mother and her salah and her ibadah. You want to be a follower of Zahra? Never miss your salah. She would never do so. Sayyida Zainab is 5. She misses the salah of her mother. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen embraces her and he begins to embrace her further and further. I say, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, she loses a mother on this day. What about when she lost her brother and entire family? Fatima lost a daughter. Zainab lost 2 sons in Karbala. It is not like a mother to lose her children. Children expect to lose their parents, but a parent never suspects they will be able to bury their child. Wa Husseina, wa Madluma, Ya Zahra, Ya Hussein. مأتم الحسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
Hussein, Ya 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 Hussein. غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر چند پتھروں نے مل کر محروم مالک دیا ہے چند پتھروں نے مل کر محروم مالک دیا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر چند پتھروں نے مل کر محروم مالک دیا ہے چند پتھروں نے مل کر محروم مالک دیا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے ناسایا ناردا ہے زہرا تیری تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر تیروں بھری کعبہ تھی اور خون بھری ردا تھی تیروں بھری کعبہ تھی اور خون بھری ردا تھی اور خون بھری ردا تھی جو شام سے بچا تھا زینب نے رکھ دیا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر دوپہر ڈل رہے ہیں خیام جل رہے ہیں دوپہر ڈل رہے ہیں خیام جل رہے ہیں خیام جل رہے ہیں تصویر کربلا کی کوئی بنا رہا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر زندان کی گھٹن سے ہر لاش بے کفن سے زندان کی گھٹن سے ہر لاش بے کفن سے ہر لاش بے کفن سے عابد نے جو سنبھالا وہ آنسو گر پڑا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر کیا یہ دلیل کم ہے اس کی کمر میں خم ہے کیا یہ دلیل کم ہے اس کی کمر میں خم ہے اس کی کمر میں خم ہے کئی بار آسمان نے سجدہ ادا کیا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر چند پتھروں نے مل کر محروم مالک دیا ہے چند پتھروں نے مل کر محروم مالک دیا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے نہ سایہ نہ ردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر. سن کر ہوا بھی روئی، خود کربلا بھی روئی، سن کر ہوا بھی روئی، خود کربلا بھی روئی، خود کربلا بھی روئی. خاک رہے نجف نے جو مرسیا پڑا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر. عباس کا ہے پہرا روزے پہ شاہدی کے، عباس کا ہے پہرا روزے پہ شاہدی کے، روزے پہ شاہدی کے. ام البنی کا پہرا اب تک لگا ہوا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، سب مل کے ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر. جس روز سے ہے چھوڑا شبیر نے مدینہ، جس روز سے ہے چھوڑا شبیر نے مدینہ، شبیر نے مدینہ، اس دن سے اور بھی کچھ سناٹا چھا گیا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر غربت کی انتہا ہے، ناسایہ ناردا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پر.
ہائے زہرا تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی، ہائے زہرا تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی، ہائے زہرا تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی. ہائے غم میں تیرے جاتی رہی، ہائے غم میں تیرے جاتی رہی، بینائی علی کی تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی، ہائے زہرا تیری تنہائی ہے. جزاک اللہ. تنہائی علی کی دربار میں ظالم کے گئی بنت پیمبر، کیا وقت تھا کچھ کرنا ثقافت ہے خیبر، ہائے ہنستے رہے غربت پہ تماشائی علی کی، تیری تنہائی جزاک اللہ جزاک اللہ، تنہائی علی کی ہائے زہرا،
تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی،
پیغام ولایت لیے گھر گھر گئی زہرا، شوہر کے لیے ڈھالتی جب تک رہی زندہ، ہائے دنیا کو بتاتی رہی سچائی علی کی، تیری تنہائی ہے،
تنہائی علی کی، ہائے زہرا،
مولا سلامت رکھے،
تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی،
کہتے تھے علی زہرا سے کیا وقت ہے بی بی، اب ہم کو سلام کے بھی کرتا نہیں کوئی، ہائے ہے باد نبی کیسی پذیرائی علی کی، تیری
تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی، ہائے زہرا، تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی،
ہائے زہرا،
تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی،
ہائے در جلتا ہوا فاطمہ زہرا پہ گرایا، محسن کی شہادت کا سبب بن گئی دنیا، ہائے تصویر مکمل نہیں ہو پائی علی کی، تیری
تنہائی ہے،
تنہائی علی کی،
ہائے زہرا، تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی،
باہر کبھی حجرے میں کبھی قبر نبی پر، ہر رات کی تاریکی میں اولاد سے چھپ کر، ہائے نکلی ہے تجھے ڈھونڈنے بینائی علی کی، تیری
تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی،
ہائے زہرا، تیری تنہائی ہے،
تنہائی علی کی،
ہائے زہرا، تیری تنہائی ہے،
تنہائی علی کی،
زہرا کی جدائی کو لگائے ہوئے دل سے 25 برس مولا نے چپ چاپ گزارے، ہائے ایک حجرے میں دل دنیا سمٹ آئی علی کی، تیری
تنہائی ہے،
تنہائی علی کی، ہائے زہرا، تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی، ہائے غم میں تیرے جاتی رہی بینائی علی کی، تیری تنہائی ہے، تنہائی علی کی، ہائے زہرا، तेरी तन्हाई है, तन्हाई अली की। सूरतुल फातिहा।
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، وجعلنا من أنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وقائدا وناصرا ونبيا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
حسينيات حسينيات
زنداباد،
يزيديات
मुर्दाबाद,
يزيديات
मुर्दाबाद.
نعرة